I am Kai Xiang and I'm year 1 engineering student. Okay, my question is currently based on the stats given of China's military spending, the budget, it's always been ever increasing, and Jane's defense forecast actually suggested that maybe by 2015 the military spending will hit approximately $240 billion. And maybe in the near future, when China's military might be able to contest with both USA and Japan's military might, how would that shape China's foreign policy?
What kind of time frame are you talking about?
Maybe in 15 to 20 years' time.
I think according to Prof. Wang, Japan today is a superior military power to China. Am I right? I mean, that's your conclusion. And the United States is so many years ahead of China. You take, I don't know, how many years for China to catch up with the United States? Maybe never.
I don't know. It's,
okay.
Both sides are building their military forces all the time.
My question is more to be able to contest. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when they are able to contest, how would that shape their foreign policy?
Okay.
And in Japan's case, how would Japan react to China if China had the military might and the political will to occupy maybe Diaoyutao one day? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Second question.
Good evening. This question is to the panel. I'm a year 2 physics major. I'm Donovan. I'm one of the culprits who don't know enough history. So I'll just like to ask about this question. There's a popular narrative that goes around saying that China is getting more and more aggressive in terms of it wanting to seize control over various places. So you have the island disputes and whatnot. My question is will you rule out the possibility of other nations who have been threatened by China's intentions to form some sort of strategic alliance or bloc in response to China's recent moves?
Okay, good question, yes.
Hi, I'm Su Rong, year 3 Tembusu student here. I usually have a lot of questions asked during those forums, but for sake of time, I try to keep it short.
Okay.
So my question is very simple to an entire panel. I wonder if there will be no Sino-Japanese War in the future after all, on the basis that the current era today is about the people. It's no longer about governments. It's no longer about hard power. It's about soft power, rather, that unites us together as one. I know this sounds very optimistic, but I have the sensing today that we are more towards that today, rather than the so-called old era version of hard power, or more like, because I see you as strong as me, and we will destroy each other and stuff like that. It's more like, because, my country, people consume your stuff, and your guys consume my cultural stuff so well, let's not fight. Let's be cool together. Kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you. Was there another question here? No. Huh? So we have 3 questions. China's increasing military might, which may one day contest that of the United States. How would the United States and Japan respond to this? Second question is whether the perception of China as increasingly aggressive is well-founded, and how should one respond to that? And the third question is a voice of peace, right? You're saying we're focusing too much on hard power and the prospect of war. We should talk about the people, about soft power. I think it's a comment, no, not a question. So we have 2 questions. Let's go around the table. I'll start with Peh Shing Huei. Shing Huei, why don't you start first?
Sure.
You can answer any of the 2 questions or the comment.
Sure, this question about the contest, I think 15, 20 years, frankly, is very difficult to look far ahead, but I would agree with Professor Wang that as of today, the Chinese military power would be still quite a long way off from the Americans. But of course, we have to dial it back a little bit and ask ourselves, so just what precisely would be the China's military priorities? And I think it's still largely defensive. A lot of it will center around protecting its maritime borders, in particular when it comes to Taiwan, how they should respond. And I believe that if China is able to achieve this amount of deterrent or anti-access capabilities towards the Americans, they don't actually need to beat the Americans in a battle. But as long as they're able to dissuade the Americans from coming close to its borders, coming close to the waters near Taiwan or even in the East China Sea, by their so-called this new missile that they have called Dongfeng 20, which is supposed to be an aircraft carrier killer. If they are able to indeed pull off something like that, and show the Americans that if you come too close, we're going to take out one of your ships, I think that'll be enough. I think that is what China is aspiring to in the short term, and not something of a large scale or of an all-out war that they can take on the Americans in a conventional battle and win. I don't think they're seeking to do that. So their aims, I believe, at least for now, are still rather modest.
Thank you, Shin Wei. Professor Koga.
So should I answer the soft power side?
Yeah.
Soft power might be the useful kind of to in the people at the people to people level, maybe like no reconciliation, but like the feeling kind of like more friendly also. But at the same time, like I saw there's some kind of situation in Japan that like the Japanese people watching the Korean drama, and then like they are actually like laughing or like crying, but then at the same time they are kind of also like criticizing what the Korea was like doing to the some like to disputed territorial disputes. So in that sense, soft power could like help, but it doesn't actually go all the way to solve the problem. So we have to actually have more kind of like come up with some idea to like reconcile it more concretely. So yeah.
I'll try and answer the question as simply as possible in this way, and that is that because we are part of the maritime world in Southeast Asia, and Japan, United States, in this part of the world really is a maritime situation, we forget that China is also a continental power. And I think we mustn't forget that, because the Chinese don't forget that. If you look at what the Chinese do, they're very, very conscious of the threats to their land borders as well. Of course, it's not obvious, there are no immediate enemies, but the possibility of problems along the land border in the west, in Xinjiang or Tibet and elsewhere, and the cost of maintaining the armed forces there. If you talk about the military expenditure, I don't know what the percentages are. I have not seen any breakdown. But I would imagine that is a major part of the military expenses, is to look after their land borders as well. So we tend to look at the maritime side. Look at the United States situation. The America has no land enemies whatsoever. I mean, I don't want to be rude to Mexicans and Canadians, but they're not going to attack the Americans any day. So the Americans have no enemies on land. They can concentrate all their forces on any part of the world that they want to at any time. China cannot do that. China's got enemies, as I said, potential enemies, right round it in every direction. And maritime power is only one small part of their power. And it's a very new part. If you look at their history, China has been always very strong on land, but never been at sea. For a short while, people talk of Zhenghe, but that's only a very short while, and they lost that advantage a long, long time ago, hundreds of years ago. And they cannot recover that. It's not the same. And the world has changed. And the maritime powers of the world are all on one side. If you look at all of them, all the major maritime powers, from the days of Britain and Holland, to the French, to the Americans, these are the maritime, and Japan, these are the great maritime powers. And everybody at sea are all allied with one another from the very beginning until this day. The Chinese have never had a maritime force to speak of. They're now beginning to. And just because they're beginning, of course, is causing a lot of alarm. But frankly, a lot of it is just nothing but make-up alarm, because there's no real threat that the Chinese Navy can do to any of the navies that I can think of. What they can do, and I think Peh is right, what they can do is try to ensure that their maritime borders are defensible, and they can deter other people from getting to attack them at sea. Because there are real dangers, and I think the Chinese recognize that. There are real dangers. Any danger to China is still primarily continental rather than from at sea. They're not going to, nobody's going to actually attack China again, attack China itself from the sea. But what the Chinese want is defense of the sea that is along their coast, and everything that is related to that part of the world. And they're only beginning. And I think they've got a long way to go before they can understand what maritime power really means and what they need to do to ensure that their sea routes for all their trading and economic interests are protected. How to do that is not by sheer power alone. It has to do with negotiations and relationships among the merchant marines of the world, and to relate them to